I would like to share with you what is the present initiative that we are trying to do at the Ministry of Education in particular, and Malaysian government in general. You know that for the past 3 years, Blue Ocean strategy has been centered to the policy in Malaysia. Blue Ocean was started by a well-known professor by the name of Chan Kim, and he became advisor to the Prime Minister, to the government of Malaysia. So many activities that we have done in Malaysia were tailored to Blue Ocean. So I'm going to share with you what I have discussed with Chan Kim 3 weeks ago, and this will be part of our initiative for 11th Mission Plan 2016-2020. Okay, before that, this is the situation. If you work in silo, the formulation is 1 + 1 is 2, business as usual. If you want to transform, you must get a professor in mathematics to agree that 1 + 1 is not 2. So this is something big. We must get more than 2. And this is what we are trying to do, to transform. And this is what we are trying to do in this conference as well, I believe. We don't want to be compromised. It means that 1 + 1 is less than 2, or we sacrifice ourselves by killing ourselves. 1 + 1, nobody survive, or one will die, so it's -1. So in this situation, it's very complex. I know in academic terms, people try to be siloed by themselves because it is the easiest way to work in academic framework, and this is what normal people normally try to portray themselves as the hero of the field. But in economic terms, when you plan for the country, you need people to work together to transform. Yeah. So this is my. I'm going to be very brief because I prepared my slide for 1 hour, but this to be much faster than that. There are 2 books, important books that I've written. Probably you would like to read in the future because I'm not able to tell you exactly what the book's all about here. But briefly, it is related to this data. Malaysia is one of the leading countries in the world in terms of spending on basic education, 16%. OECD is about 8%, 8.7%. But this is only basic education. We have another 5% for higher education. So in my portfolio, I'm controlling 5% budget of the country, which is about 12.6 billion a year. And this is big compared to other countries. The issue, we have many initiatives, we have many universities, we have many research, we have many researchers, we have many institutions trying to benefit from that 3 to 5%. So the only solution, the way forward we can do with impactful framework is to collaborate, to standardize, to transform 1 + 1 more than 2. Those who are not familiar with this, we started in 1971, not starting a university, but starting a framework of university in 1971 by TEDx, and then in 2007, we launched Higher Education Strategic Plan, and that was very significant in Malaysia. And at the moment, we are reviewing that plan. Then we want to call it Higher Education Strategic Plan 2, but since we have merged 2 ministries, so we have to follow the existing framework on the other partner of Ministry of Education. So we call it Education Blueprint 2015-2025, which is the second version of Strategic Plan 2007. So we can see that from that perspective, we plan many things. This is not common to many countries in the world. If you go to the United States, for example, there is no national policy on higher education. If you go to the United Kingdom, there is no national policy on higher education. So they do it a different way. They just have initiated a lot of things. In the UK, say for example, there is no department in charge of higher education. Only 2% at the Treasury looking after the funding. That's all. So in my context, abroad, especially United Kingdom, I'm supposed to be irrelevant. If you go to Singapore, only about a couple of them working on education. So again, my position should be redundant. So if I want to become synergized, I should propose to government that this ministry or this part of the ministry should be reduced in numbers to make a lot of initiative easier to be conducted, I think. But we can see that this is something, and as an outcome of 2007 initiative in terms of ISI genome. Many people say, why you show this data? I just want to show that by having that, we have done a lot. We have significantly improved. This is comparing Malaysia with other countries in the world. You can see that Malaysia has indicated the highest in terms of increase within that 5 years, comparing to other countries. Of course, South Korea, they have more papers in the past. I'm talking about numbers, because before you get quality, you have to get numbers first. Yeah? Normally, numbers tell you quality as well. So slowly, from quantitative, you get qualitative aspect. And this is in ISI, not in any other journals. And you can see we managed to be higher than Singapore in 2012 in terms of ISI paper. Of course, their papers are probably higher quality than us in terms of impact and whatnot, but we can work on that. The framework is very clear that having that policy, we can improve by 300%. So we want to continue the policy in the 10th or 11th Indonesian plan. This is the annual R&D growth 1996 to 2007. Despite we are complaining not enough funds, actually in terms of growth, we are the leading country in the world in terms of spending on research, in terms of growth perspective. So it must be something wrong if we say that it's not enough money in the ecosystem. Yeah, we have to look into the efficiency of spending the money, how best we can collaborate in particular. This is the number of PhD students in Malaysia. This is my book, you can read. In 2002 we have only 4,000, in 2011 we have 31,000, you can see. And then the number of international students in Malaysia, this is also big, from 26,000 to 91,000 in 2011. And this is 2013, we have slightly more than 40,000, it's about 41,000, and this is about 97,600. So it shows that progress is inevitable in this context in Malaysia if we follow the existing framework and policies. This is the context of UTM in terms of postgraduate students. They became the first university in the country having more than 50% postgraduate. PhD student was 4,455. At the moment, 5,100 PhD students. Yeah. Number of their PhDs, and then they I think register intellectual property more than 400 a year. So, and big number of international students. So this is common. If you take the other universities in Malaysia, UKM, UPM, University of Science, this is common profile of the universities. It shows that we have a lot of potential. The question, how can we really benefit from these potentials? These are potential, indication of potentials that they can do marvelously if we really guide them to move forward. So this week, I'm working together again. I'm a bit tight this week, working with a very well-known professor from Harvard Business School by the name of Diego Kuming. He is the one who teaches Malaysia cases at Harvard Business School. If you take MBA from Harvard, you must attend his class, and he will teach you 2 cases on Malaysia. The first case will be on palm oil. The second case is about transformation plan in the country. So we have a lot of engagement with him, with Prime Minister. So normally when it relates to him, I will be assisting Prime Minister to get many things. So that was our last assignment given by Prime Minister. The next assignment will be this week. We have another whole week next week to work on something as part of the assignments. Okay, what is the assignment about? The assignment was about understanding this data. This data is about productivity of the country. When we talk about productivity, many people thought productivity is just what we define as productivity. But in real terms, productivity can be seen in the bigger context, long range perspective, more than 10 years. It's not on an annual basis. So, in particular, DEGO has conducted a study on productivity growth. Productivity means whatever you put in, the input should produce something. If today the input is 1%, tomorrow 1.1%, means that you're progressing. If you produce 0.9%, you are declining. So in the past 10 years, between 2001 to 2007 versus 1990-97, we take these two era, we found that the productivity was reduced from 6 to 2. The investment in terms of percentage of GDP was reduced from about 40% to 22%. This is very scary if you look at it. And we are asking why this thing happened. Why, after we started with Proton Saga, we are not able to produce as good as Proton Saga in that context, in that particular period of time? So this is the question DEGO is trying to understand, and this is what I'm working with him at the moment. So finally, we found that there are 4 items which is very important for us to understand. Number 1 is low technology adoption and knowledge acquisition. Not to say that you don't have PhDs. We have a lot of PhD students. When we mention about technology adaptation, is that something you learn that can be practical later in a very short period of time. I'm working with him to look into few technologies and how we can progress from that version 1 technology to version 2, version 3, version 4, and version 5. And it must be in market in a specific period of time. Next week, we are going to work with MTDC and a group of people from various industries, and we want to test if we teach you, we give you one technology, how fast we can adapt, make money out of it, and we go for version 2. The version 2 is very important. You can see that when you buy Samsung, we discussed about Samsung this morning. I'm so sorry why Samsung is so important in my life now. Before you buy the existing available Samsung version, they have already 5 versions ready to be marketed in their pipeline. So it shows that they are very fast to adapt, and this must be a feature or a features of Malaysian technology. So this is lacking in the country. So this is something that we have to do, and this can be done if we use a lot of potentials that we have. In particular, in palm oil, gathering like this is where we pinch technology, where you pinch knowledge, as it indicated. I know that Professor Ali Hassan is my sifu in this bioplastic kind of thing. He has been working with this for the past 30 years. 30 years or 20 years. 30 years. He must be able to show us the correct direction where to go. But we have to really benefit from them. I was in China because part of this project for me to understand how China adopt and how they can steal technology very fast. I was in China about 3 weeks ago, and I met a professor, and this professor, they jointly together developed technology. It's very simple technology for wastewater treatment plant. But from the day that they started and now, which is less than 10 years, they have already utilized that 326 wastewater treatment plant in China. And they have version 1, version 2, version 3. And at the moment, we are thinking about version 8 or version 7 within that 10 years when they first implemented. The industry are so willingly to offer help, to try, and agencies like Equals, the MPOB in their context are very willingly to invest and to try, and as a result, they have 326. So So you want to bring that technology to Malaysia and want to see how fast we can adopt that technology, make second version out of it. That is technology adoption. We need to adopt. The only time you buy is the first one. The second one you have to make adjustment, and that's yours. Yeah? So this is very slow in Malaysia. Unlike Korea, unlike Japan, unlike China, they are very fast in learning. So in order to learn, we have to collaborate. In China, any new technologies, they must come with professors behind it. Say for example, they have water authority. Yes, the water authority people will go, but together with them a group of professors who are willing to learn fast and ready for version 2 in the market another 3 years or 2 years. So this is their strategy. Therefore, they are very fast in adopting that technology. And then they can stay focused, and then they can compete, and then they can be player in global market. So this is number one. I'm not going to talk about number 2, number 3. I think that is irrelevant for this context. Yeah. So I'm going to talk. What is the shortcomings available in the system? Collaboration within Malaysia, sharing facilities. We share facilities with Denmark, with Professor Zuriati. We were together in Denmark many years ago. So I got attracted to Denmark 1997 or 1995. They are very fast. We collaborate with them. But within ourselves, within Malaysia, we are not collaborating. There is no transfer credit program to UKM and UKM. It is only across the road. Yeah? Or with Nottingham University, which is across the hill. Low total productivity in IP in publications compared to standard. Knowledge ecosystem impact beyond academia. This is what I mentioned earlier. We are confining ourselves within ourselves. Professor Ramalan within his circle, chemistry circle, Professor Mazmin within his circle. We cannot go beyond that. We cannot go to policymakers, to KSU of that ministry, for example. Yeah. Entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial culture that go beyond academia, and sustainability of financial framework in terms of economy. So this is something that I think very important. I don't have time to talk about it. You can read my book. This is ABCDEFG, innovation principle that I developed. I don't have time to talk about it. So this is something that is important for us. So I hope from this meeting we will be able to understand the way forward. We started university as undergraduate and postgraduate programs, and then we started PhD programs where we have research in it, and then we became research focused university like research universities that we have, or research intensive university. Nottingham also mentioned that they are research intensive university, and they are. Yeah, so I think we have to admit that. We have to recognize that. And then academia industry partnership, and this is missing in the context of Malaysia. If you observe what's happening in Singapore, say for example, almost all laboratories are funded by companies. So they will not be able to start a laboratory if they will not able to find industrial partner. So this should be happening to our context as well, to Malaysia as well. But I think this trajectory is not, it is predictable. It is common to everyone. There are a lot of initiatives now to go beyond that, and this is what I call entrepreneurial university, where they are not depending on industry partnership. If you want to have industry partnership, a lot of activities will not be started in university. Say for example, Google or Facebook, if they want to have industry partner the day one, they will not be able to start anything. So we allow university students and professors to grow, to do their crazy things, and then from there, entrepreneurial culture will grow, and then they can develop without support from industry perhaps. So this is industrial entrepreneurial university that we're talking about. And for that matter, we need more than PhD staff, well-known professors, research culture, and we need what we call new academia. This can only happen when we have different structure of academics. Say for example, faculty members not limited to professor tenure tracks, like Professor Sharifah, Professor Ramalan, and probably me, but we need also in our package of membership of our faculty members includes inventors, entrepreneurs, and policy makers. I give you an example at business school, Harvard Business School. Professor Nick Mariam spent 2 years there with her husband. more than 10% of the professors are not tenure track. They are industrial track. They are there because they have done something great in their life as entrepreneur or as businessmen, as leaders. I give you an example. The leading one is John Basco. This is from environmental engineering. He was director of 8 of water projects in World Bank. And then we have also Bill George that wrote a book on True North. So he was CEO of Medtronic. He developed Medtronic from 1 billion company to 60 billion companies. And he delivered programs on leadership. So this is initiative that we have to have in our university, so that our university will be more entrepreneurial in nature. We have people who have done their work. I give you an example in Malaysia. When we started UIA, we managed to get former judges to start our law faculties. And because of that, the standing of UIA, I'm not talking about UCAM, I'm talking about UIA, okay? The standing of law faculty of UIA at that time was very high, higher than the previously existing law faculties of Malaya and the rest. Why? Because, if I'm not mistaken, 4 judges, former judges, were among their professors, leading professors, initiated the faculty. And they have only bachelor degrees. Some of us with LinkedIn, not even bachelor degrees. Yeah? So it shows that we need to value tacit knowledge more than paper knowledge of credential. This is very important. This only happened when we change that. This is what ministry is trying to do. We want to have a track for that, and for that, for hospital or medical schools, we want to have 2 tracks. One academic track, the other one is clinical track. Yeah? So they can reach up to JUSA A using that track. And finally, I don't have time. So you can read that. I give the slide to the secretariat for you to enjoy. I want to talk about this man. This man is very interesting man. He mentioned about Blue Ocean because of creating an uncontested market. For the past 2 consecutive years, Chan Kim was named the 2nd most influential management group. So you have to listen to him. Yeah. And he is the person behind Samsung. He is the person behind few Korean companies that we have at the moment. So those who are interested in Samsung, iPhone or whatnot, so you have to listen to this man. In May, he wrote a book. He wrote an article in in Harvard Business Review. The title of the article is Blue Ocean Leadership. So I'm going to talk a bit, 5 minutes, about this Blue Ocean Leadership. Because of 30% of the employees surveyed by Gallup considered talented and they have energy to move the company or organization forward. 50% just putting the time in, while 20% will be reversed. So most of us, sometimes we know that these are 3 categories. Some of us in academic terms, we are number 1, number 2, or number 3. But that is within the organization. If you try to portray yourself in the bigger picture, probably you are 20% because you don't want to collaborate, you don't want to share your knowledge, you don't want to move forward for the sake of your country. It's not. Yeah, so probably we are in 20%, probably, yeah, I'm saying we are. So because of that 20%, America lost a year $1 trillion. That's because unnecessarily activities. Because you fund people to quarrel, you fund people to give money for them to travel, and then they quarrel, and then give them accommodation allowances. They don't produce anything from that meetings. And this is because of poor leadership. Yeah? So this is very important. So Blue Ocean focuses on activities rather than title and designation. So this is good about Denmark. In Denmark, if you look into their university management team, you don't know who are the president or rector of the university because they put in one line. Am I right? So you have to find who are the president, who are the deans, who are head of any organization because they put in one line. And most likely by alphabetical. So if your name is you will be down on this part, you are top in the organization. Yeah? So in our case, no. The first one first. Yeah, so it shows that we focus too much on leaders, who the leaders are, rather than acts and activities they can do. So we have to connect with realities. We have to distribute leadership across the management team. So these are 12 tools of Blue Ocean. I'm not teaching Blue Ocean today. I just want to raise two important tools. Number one is tipping point leadership, and the other one is Eric. Eric is eliminates, reduce, raise, and create grades. Yeah? So okay, what is the basis for us to have this leadership framework? Because we want to mobilize team when we have scar in terms of resources, in terms of time and money, and this is the best time for us to Blue Ocean. Yeah, if you have abundant profit, there is no need for you to change. Collaborate with others. Time. So if we can eliminate some of the activities, we can reduce some of the activities, we can reduce the cost. And we raise and create something, we can increase the value. So these are very important concepts. Whenever we want to reduce costs, there are two things we must do: eliminate and reduce. Yeah? Say many things we can do. Sometimes we have to reduce the number of faculties, the number of departments, the number of courses we are offering, because it is no longer appropriate or it is redundant. When I was in UTM, the bragging, so you have to listen, this is bragging. We had 2008 104 undergraduate courses. 104. Every faculty is the one to grow and to grow. Come to see me, I want to start a new course. What is the course? Oh, we have received 3 new PhD holders. They are specializing in this. We want to change this course into that. So they have Bachelor of Electrical Engineering, Instrumentation. Bachelor of Electrical Engineering, Mechatronics. Bachelor of 13 of them. In Bachelor of Engineering, I asked them what is the difference between A and B, 2 courses. So I said, can you sit down together and reduce? So I gave them within a few months or within a few years to reduce from 13 to 5. So they managed to reduce to 5 now. Okay? So many of them we reduced. Because of that, we reduced the number of coordinator of that program. We reduced the number of laboratories and departments and whatnot. So it became smaller and smaller. And then we have more time to do research. And then we reduce a lot of expenses incurred in the past. So this is what we want to do. So in doing that, we also need to raise something. So I give you an example. For this meeting, this event, what we need to eliminate is silo working culture. I think this is just proposal we can discuss about. Yeah. Silo working culture. In MPOB, they do their own stuff, forget about universities. Universities forget about MPOB. Private universities, they have their own needs because I'm professors, I know what to do in life, blah, blah, blah. This cannot be done. As a country, we must work together. I mentioned to you how China, in 10 years, they have the new technology they acquired somewhere. They have 326 plants. Yeah. I have studied that technology when I was a professor in UTM for many years, since I came back from PhD. And I realized that this is the technology we should do. And none of us are able to accept that technology because they said that it's out of line. So as a result, there is no actual plan that I can show from my knowledge. But in China, they have the same technology that I investigated, do research on it. They have done a lot. And domestic focus. We must think that we are in a group of people in Malaysia. We want to go abroad. We want to compete abroad and want to be good from that perspective. What to be reduced is overlapping. So by having this, we don't want to overlap. We don't want to be too academic centric. Academic centric means that I'm a professor, I know better than you. That is the disease of professorship, I would say. I gave a lecture recently because I'm no longer active professor. I can give lecture. Professor Nick, if you want that to be conducted in University Malaya, I can give lecture on diseases of professorship. Yeah? Professorshipitis, call it. And then what to increase the productivity. We don't talk about input, we talk about output, productivity. We talk about economic impact, we talk about global prominence, and we create something. Open innovation, virtual palm oil repository, for example. This is just when I was still fresh this morning. So I think about it, yeah. Virtual palm oil repository, new downstream economies, a lot of things. We're talking about phenolates, we're talking about vitamin E, we're talking about many things, yeah, from waste in particular. So I don't want to elaborate on this. This is example what to be reduced, what to be enhanced, what to be created in the context. You can have this slide later. My slide is not copyrighted. It is free for you. But before you read that slide, you give you blessing to me and pray for my success. I will see. Yeah. And this is from senior perspective, a senior management perspective. Okay, before I end, I'm going to share with you what demand-driven R&D model, because this is what will appear in the German Sectors class, or 11 lesson plan. We would like to have what we call demand-driven. It's no longer supply-driven. What we are doing now is supply-driven. After you conducted research, completing your PhD, and you're asking, hey, anyone interested on my research? So that is post-activity selling. Yeah? So this is not good. We sell that prior to conducting the activities. So in order to do that, we have learning institution on the side. Learning institution, professors, postdoctoral, graduate students, student at large. And industry, SME, public listed companies, multinational, and center of excellence, research agencies, MPOB in this case, training agencies, not-for-profit agencies, individuals. There are some individuals who are center of that discipline that we have to refer to. Yeah, and then sponsors, public grants, and whatnot. So whenever we talk about demand-driven, the emphasis is to get a common platform. And this platform is what we call Blue Ocean Strategy. This is what we try to move forward. So say for example, MPOB has its own task, university own task, and we want to generate something. So what are the generations? In the past, when we were doing, we plan something, we do it at our own territory. Circle of influence. We are not able to leverage on others. I give you an example. This is a Samsung model. This is open innovation in Samsung. This is innovative technology. This I can see from here. This is talented personnel, and then they have a creative idea. And this is open technology. You can do anything within a circle. And whenever you find niche, you come back to the core. And this is where we leverage and then we move forward. Therefore, Samsung, whenever they announce something, they have 5 other models ready to be commercialized or ready to be marketed, just waiting their time to be marketed. So we want that to happen in our business in Malaysia, and then we can be a leading country, industrialized country. So I recapture that. This is private research institute, affiliate members of the university. So this is, if you want to have demand driven from university perspective, this is ministries giving sponsors, fellowships, scholarships, companies, and public research institute. Yeah. This is also important. We sponsor more than 1 billion a year for masters and PhD in the country. I'm chairing the committee for scholarship and fellowships. We have SLAB, SLI, Scheme Latihan Academy Putra, Scheme Latihan Academy University. We have Migraine 15 and a few others. So all in the funding available is more than 1 billion. If you do research, 60 to 70% of your work, of your expenses is on students or paying your research personnel. If you take that aside, it means that money is already given to you, provided we have a good program, and the money for, say for example, consumable, you can get from private or from companies, and then put on table. So you get 60% of the money ready there, and I have to announce this last year we were not able to spend 170 million. Yeah? Money for Migraine 15. 170 million was returned. So please make use of the money. money is available. If you want to do my Brain 50, you can find a PhD student work in an area and you put them together under palm oil. So you can budget them palm oil research for this networking. You can have 200 PhDs. The money is available. Yeah? Money is available. So what I'm going to announce today, whenever you have the topics and students, the money, 60% or 70% of your research cost is already there. So you have to find another 30%. Yeah? The old framework, you want the whole thing new, 100%. This is ours. Cannot be. That is not Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean, when I give you something, you give me something. Yeah? And then this is Blue Ocean. So as far as Ministry of Education is concerned, we have on table 1 billion for this. And I don't want to return 170 million at the end of this year to Treasury. It shows that we are not aggressive enough to do research and to fund activities related to research.